So our third question comes from @ReverseDVD. Their question is, with Wemby, Sohan, Barnes, Vassell, and Chris Paul being the projected starting five, what should be the next five coming off the bench to back them up? So who is the second unit? Who are the next five players? So this is also a question I've kind of addressed in prior episodes, but I'll go through it again here. So I think that the bench unit, there's at least four players I think are locked on the bench, off the bench. It's Tre Jones as the backup point guard, Stephon Castle as the backup shooting guard, Keldon Johnson as the backup power forward, or wing, smaller wing player. And then also Zach Collins as the backup center to Wemby. So again, I think those four players, their roles are set, ready to go as off the second unit. The player though, who I currently have penciled in there in that next spot, that small forward position, backup small forward, is Julian Champagnie. But again, I don't think he's a lock. I think because we saw that he was a starter last season, he's a knockdown shooter that Pop can rely on for offense, for spacing. And then defensively, he's a stable defender out there. I think he has the advantage currently over Malaki Branham and Blake Wesley. So again, I think that there's going to be a battle going on in training camp in the preseason to see who gets that 10th spot there off the bench. And I think that comes down to, again, Champagnie, Malaki Branham, or Blake Wesley. Or I think there's also a chance that Pop split some of those minutes, kind of like what he did with Doug McDermott and Jetty Osman last season, where some games McDermott would start the first half, then the second half we saw more Jetty Osman out there. So he could do something like that where he splits the minutes in that 10th spot between, Champagnie for a quarter, and then Branham for maybe another quarter, or Wesley and Champagnie, something like that. I think that there's those two options. So again, right now, I think that four of those backup players are ready to go, that they're going to be in the second unit. It comes down to that 5th spot of who's going to play those extra minutes, whether it's Champagnie, Branham, or Wesley. And again, currently, before preseason and training camp even start, I do have a Champagnie there in that role. All right, and now for the final question. It comes from @Sushanti Rao. Sushanti Rao, hopefully I said that right. Okay, so their question is, what are the Spurs shooting for this season? Respect but lottery, play-in, outright playoff team. And I want to give you credit there because I kind of like I like how you put different categories there. So again, those are their categories there. So respect but lottery, play-in, or outright playoff team. So I'm going to say the Spurs will. I think they're shooting. Obviously, they're going to say they're shooting for the playoffs. I think every team, unless you're in like the bottom three, or saying looking at the lottery, other teams they're always going to be shooting for the playoffs. So they're probably going to say they're shooting for the playoffs. But I think more realistically, they're going to be in that respect but lottery range, or that play-in range, kind of fighting in those two areas. And so when we look at their over/under, according to Vegas, they are projected to win 36, or their over/under is 36.5 wins, which is much higher than the 22 last season. So we do see that with the moves of adding Stephon Castle, adding Chris Paul, adding Harrison Barnes, this should be a better team, at least on paper right now, coming into this next season. The problem, though, is that they play in the Western Conference, and that is a very tough conference. Really, there's only two teams right now on paper that I say the Spurs are immediately better than, and that's Portland, who's expected to finish 15th out west, and Utah, who's expected to finish 14th out west. And so when we just look at the over-unders of where the Spurs are projected to finish, they're actually projected to finish 13th out west. And I think that it comes down to these few teams that the Spurs are going to have to battle with. They have to battle with the Clippers, who I think could take a fall this year. If Kawhi has some different injuries he's dealing with, they mainly have Harden as one of their key playmakers, and like Norman Powell. They have Zubac. Again, the fact that they lost Paul George, the Clippers could be one of those teams that maybe the Spurs try to pass in the standings. And also the Rockets. The Rockets had a good season. That they were developing last year. They showed strides last year, and so that's another team that the Spurs are battling with to try to pass up, to try to get into that play-in range. And then let's just say that the Spurs do finish with better records than both the Rockets and the Clippers. Well, then guess what? Now they're knocking on the door of 10th, and projected to finish 10th right now is the Los Angeles Lakers, who have most of their team back from last season. Obviously, they got eliminated pretty early in the playoffs, but they're still, a good core team with Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and some of the other players they have on their roster. And then also the Warriors, made some addition. I know they lost Klay Thompson, but they still have the majority. They have a lot of their veteran players still on the team, like Draymond, Stephen Curry, Kevon Looney. Then they've added a lot of shooting and different playmaking on their team, like Kyle Anderson. They added Buddy Hield, amongst a few names. D'Anthony Melton was also added to the Warriors. So again, I think Golden State's still going to be a pretty good team there. So again, if you're the Spurs, I think that they're going to be in that mix there of kind of battling with the Clippers, the Rockets, the Lakers, and the Warriors to see which of those teams ends up going into the play-in scenario. And if they don't, well, then I think that those teams finish kind of right outside the bubble. So that's kind of where I think the Spurs are right now, just based on paper. And then one of the teams that kind of threw a wrench here that should be better this year, that really wasn't in this conversation last year, is Memphis. Memphis, with the healthy John Morant, they should be ready to go. They added Zach Edey via the draft, and so Memphis, if they're good again, like they were 2 or 3 years ago, when they were, when they were the top teams in the West, then right now they're projected to be the 5th seed out West. So again, you're throwing, one of the bad teams from last year now into the upper, the upper echelon mix there of teams. And so that's kind of where I do see the Spurs. I think that they are battling with the Clippers, Rockets, Lakers, and Warriors to try to get one of those playing spots. And that's kind of like who do they pass up? That's the thing, is they got to pass up one of these teams. And again, out of those 4 teams I named, I think the Clippers are the most likely one that they have a chance of passing up. I think it's going to be tough for them, though, to pass up the Rockets and the Lakers and the Warriors. So again, thank you for sending in that question. And again, I liked how you put the different tiers there. But I do think the Spurs will be more respectable this year, probably end up in the lottery, or if not, at best, I think they do get into one of those play-in seeds like the 9 or 10 seeds.